What is that one thing that can transform this world? That one thing is education.
At Sai University, this active interdisciplinary model represents the future of education, not the mugging, rather thought-provoking ideas that stretch the mind and lead to a genuinely educated person who will go through life being able to seize new opportunities, create new businesses, and confront new challenges.
Sneha Chowdhury, Soumya Gandhi,
Abhishek Jain.
We are all proud to be a part of Sai University.
So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste and a very warm welcome to all of you to the Blub World Web Talks 151st episode. I am Daksh, the founder of Blub World. In the last 150 episodes, we have talked to, interacted with nearly 2,500 school leaders from all across the world, where we have tried to understand from them how is education changing, innovating, and how are we innovating education. नमस्कार, आप सभी का बहुत 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 स्वागत ब्लब वर्ल्ड के 151वें एपिसोड में वेब टॉक्स के। पिछले 150 एपिसोड्स में करीबन 2,500 स्कूल प्रिंसिपल से हम लोग बात कर चुके, उनसे समझने के लिए कि शिक्षा कैसे बदल रही है या हम शिक्षा को कैसे बदल रहे हैं। सो वेरी वार्म वेलकम टू ऑल ऑफ यू. This is a bilingual platform, so you'll be using two languages, English and Hindi. If you want to use a third language, you can, but try sticking to these two because I won't get it. So try using English or Hindi during the complete 60 minutes that we have with you. Most importantly, it's a timed platform. So once your speaking time is over, you might get muted. Think of it like a sprint. It's not a marathon. So once your speaking time is over, you might get muted. If you get muted, please don't get offended. It is just to keep the activity crisp and entertaining. If you get offended, I am sorry at the beginning of it, but please don't get offended. It's just to create a good level of flavor and a little bit of urgency in the complete interaction so that we enjoy it a little bit more. Thank you so much everybody for joining in today. आज हम इस पूरे इंटरेक्शन में जो अगले 60 मिनट आप हमारे साथ खर्च करेंगे, उन 60 मिनटों में हम ये जानने की कोशिश करेंगे कि विश्वविद्यालयों का भविष्य कैसा है, या how is going to be the future of universities, कि हम जो यूनिवर्सिटीज अपने आसपास देखते हैं वो कैसे बदलने वाली हैं, या हम उन्हें किस किस तरीके से चेंज करने वाले हैं, या हमारी एक्सपेक्टेशंस किस किस तरीके से बदल रही हैं. Because when we look at education, we look at it in silos, like kindergarten, then primary, then secondary, and then finally university level. But now, when the whole world comes together on a Zoom call or any virtual call, we all know that these silos do not exist anymore. The complete big value chain of education has come together, and we are finally focusing on pedagogy. We are focusing on methodology, because we know that the only thing that you can do, or the only thing required to be done in the education space, is teaching and learning. And उसके जो आसपास की बहुत सारी ब्रांडिंग थी, वो बहुत सारी ब्रांडिंग अब टूट गई है, एंड काफी कुछ हम कोर एरियाज पे फोकस करने पे वापस मजबूर हो गए हैं. ये मजबूरी अच्छी है, ये मजबूरी खराब है, और ये मजबूरी हमें भविष्य में किस किस तरीके से बदलने को मजबूर करने वाली है, ये हम जानने की कोशिश करेंगे हमारे बहुत सारे अमेजिंग एक्सपर्ट्स से. सो वेरी वार्म वेलकम वंस अगेन, एंड लेट्स ट्राई टू नो फ्रॉम आवर अमेजिंग एक्सपर्ट्स दैट हाउ वुड दे डिफाइन द यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ द फ्यूचर. This is the 151st episode of the Blub World Web Talks. Let me invite the first speaker for today to share his expertise, his idea of the university of a future, Mr. Shailendra Swaminathan, the Dean of Division of Social Sciences and Professor of Economics at Sai University, Chennai, Tamil Nadu. Shailendra, over to you for the next 4 minutes. Please unmute your audio, and a very warm welcome.
Thanks so much, Daksh. So obviously the topic here is defining the university of the future. But I thought, it'll be sort of probably equally important to sort of look at try to define the future with no university, because I think it's important to understand, a future with no university, and just to try and understand the university idea right now is this sort of building, you have faculty, you have students, and at the end of it, the expectation that there's sort of jobs that are going to be lined up, and somehow those jobs are delivered, and then everyone goes home happy. So that's the way the university has been set up. From the student standpoint, it's really looking for jobs. From the faculty standpoint, at the world's topmost university, there's obviously a lot of research involved. Nobel Prize winners come out of that university with a very strong research focus as well, right? So that's how we understand a university right now. And so let's just think about, what's the future then with no university, right? Actually, if you think about it, it may not be all that, terrible, because if you think about jobs, and you know this, Daksh, as well as everyone else, the university is essentially the kind of skills that they're imparting to students. I mean, you talk to any of the employers, most of them essentially have to retrain, reskill the students once they actually enter the job, right? I mean, the university doesn't actually serve that purpose. That is sort of, I think, at least some people expect it to serve. So in terms of actually delivering jobs to the student and by imparting the skills, well, I don't think that's happening. The second aspect of it about, having faculty actually do research, well, that can happen outside the university. You talk about the Bell Labs, the major sort of research labs in the world. You can do cutting edge research outside the university system. So the way the university is set up right now, that, I mean, at least I can imagine a future with no university. But then what is it that actually, would define the university of the future? Well, think about the global problems that we're faced with right now, right? You're talking about environmental problems, you're talking about health and poverty and inequality, hunger. These are major world problems. Now, to actually solve any of these problems, you need a group of people working together. You need very open minds. You need people to be able to collaborate across, across disciplines. You need people who essentially are trained in, sort of underlying truth, trained in integrity. You have to have a certain amount of integrity to solve some of these problems we're confronted with. You've got to be able to engage in civic engagement becomes important. So to me, a university of the future would essentially be a university that trains students with some of those characteristics, right? Those sort of essential attributes that you would need to be able to be a part of solving some of these world problems, right? So, I mean, so to me, I think that sort of helps sets the stage a little bit to try and understand what is it the university is actually setting out to do, right? If it's not going to be able to deliver jobs, it's got to have a purpose. It's long outlived the original purpose of the university. As you know, that's the idea of a university was it's a community of masters and scholars. We're long gone past that, trying to look for jobs now. It's sort of time, I think, for a university to reinvent itself and actually help the students coming out of the university be part of, the solution to some of these worldwide problems. So I'm going to stop there and
Thank you so much, Helenji. Let me summarize what you said, take some of the important points to take the discussion ahead. Before understanding or defining the university of a future, let's imagine a future without a university. And I think we are already living that future where a lot of job creators are not looking at university degrees when they look at employment, when they look at the kind of people that they want, the kind of skills that they want within their organizations. When we look at the research aspect of it, we can still do research without the university. And a university right now is synonymous to somebody who skills and gets you a job. And now we need to refine or try to, rediscover the purpose or the motive of a university. And that's where the university of the future will find its definition. And most importantly, a community of masters and scholars. This has now, got to evolve in many more different ways, because it has to be now a knowledge center. It cannot be just about people who know a lot, who will be telling you a lot. It's rather the experience of it, so that when you get into a university, you're a student, but when you get out of it, you as an individual are transformed rather than just filled with a lot more information. So moving from the information part of it to the wisdom part of it. So thank you so much, Shailendra-ji. Let me invite the next speaker for today. Before I invite the next speaker, we'll now be typically listening to school leaders. Now, the reason why we try to blend these two spaces together is very simple, because a university comes in with a set of expectations that they want the student to be like this, like that. And the school wants the university to treat the student in a certain way. And there is a big disconnect that comes into play. And that's where there's a good learning loss. And at the same time, what we can say, experience loss that now needs to be patched in new and different and innovative ways. And it can now be done very easily because resources are available virtually. So let me invite the first speaker from the school perspective, Mr. Diaz, the principal of Greenwood High from Bengaluru, Karnataka. Louis, over to you for the next 4 minutes. Please unmute your audio and a very warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Daksh. Yes, I think as a school leader, the way that we look at what is the university of the future, so far has been a very traditional way. We prepare our children to get into what we think are the so-called leading universities, either here in this country or anywhere else in the world. And times are changing so rapidly that today, when we look at what should be the future university, I think there needs to be a very strong link between industry and what is the purpose of that university. I think Shailendra just now spoke about, the skill sets having to be redone by those who are employing the students from university. I think students should be ready for the industry when they finish the university. And therefore, we need to relook at what is the curriculum in these universities. I think the traditional knowledge base has to change to something that is closer to being skill-based. We talk about communication, we talk about collaboration, we talk about, yes, somebody just now mentioned research, but what is this research? I think it's not just research, but the whole methodology that is really required for that. There's so much talk about IT, the Internet of Things, and of course, artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth. I think when children finish school to go on to universities, the skill sets that they require to be ready for the industry is something that the universities need to relook at. I believe that that move is on. I believe that there are a lot of new age universities like the new age schools that are looking at how should we really prepare our students for life. And that is my belief in what a university of the future should be. It's very difficult to define it, but I'm sure that today we cannot just sit back and say, okay, these wonderful institutions of knowledge is what's going to keep the world running. Not anymore. I believe things are changing, and I believe it is for the better. Back to you, Daksh.
Thank you so much, Louis. So let me try to summarize what you said. Preparing for the so-called leading universities, I think we all lost a lot of brand positioning during the complete lockdown. A lot of effort that was taken to put institutions onto a certain way, or typically being looked at in a certain way. A big perceptive loss happened when we experienced the complete lockdown, or typically the COVID crisis, because we started looking at things from a very different perspective. We are now looking at things from the core requirement perspective of it. We are not looking at the kind of packaging it has. We are not looking a lot on the kind of, what we can say, the look it has. The perception has now moved to a little bit or skewed towards the reality. So we are trying to, again, look at the utility of everything that's happening around us. And that's where the new definition or a new structure of even a school or a university will come from, trying to focus on what outcome are we trying to achieve through these institutions. Strong connect between industry and university to find the new objective. Yes, because now when we talk of employment and industry, the leading top 20 organizations of the world, as of now, tell us that in the future, we would not be asking for people to submit their CVs or their degrees for the job. They would rather have to go through a skill test when they do their hiring. And as it normally happens, we replicate what the leader does. So the leaders have started doing it. So we now need to think that how would this replication impact the education ecosystem? Knowledge to the skill transition, and finally, methodologies which need evolution beyond knowledge. We are very much focused on content. We are very much focused on syllabus. We need to move our focus from that syllabus, from that content, to a completely new arena, which starts with skilling, and I think which concludes or which goes towards wisdom. So thank you so much, Rui. Let me invite the next speaker for today. Dr. Reshma Ganesh, founder, principal, and campus director, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar Vidya Mandir School from Bengaluru, Karnataka. Reshma ma'am, over to you for the next 3 to 4 minutes. Please unmute your audio, and a very warm welcome.
Thank you so much. And what I wanted to present is also in the same lines as what Mr. Lewis sir just now mentioned. This pandemic has opened a flood of new gates, new avenues, and has brought in a complete mind shift in our acceptance. adapting ourselves to this new digital world. The pace of change has been so rapid. Students are increasingly comfortable with using these high-tech gadgets or technology. The virtual learning atmosphere, it has accelerated the pace of learning actually now, and has enabled diversity into the field of learning too. So what I would like to say is here, pioneering research into online education, having innovation lab. The focus is on applied education, making it a mandate to reimagine education. The education lab looks to reinvent the ways of teaching. Now, the way we are going about it, there has to be a complete mind shift. And fortunately, we have all adapted to it very easily now. And so learning is happening at a very accelerated pace in the school levels. So the university that we are looking for and what it has to offer has also to be in sync with giving a lot of scope for this diversity, the different programs that it offers, the courses that it offers. There should be a lot of flexibility that is coming, so that, if a person chooses engineering as his career, he or she is completely stuck with that career forever. So, but now with a lot of permutations and combinations that the NEP has permitted, has brought in, which if put even in these universities, in the courses, they can choose. They will have a plan A, they'll have a plan B, they can have a plan C. So after a couple of years, if they're not enjoying their stint as an engineer or working in a software industry, they have a plan B and something else to change their entire career path. So that is where applied education, giving them, as Sir mentioned, about the 21st century skills, because this is what is required in the workforce also now, helping them to equip themselves, to adapt themselves. So wide range of programs, the courses that can be offered, and again at the space of the learner as well as the time. There's a lot of flexibility that is to be added, because now all the artificial intelligence or vocational training is being implemented right from the grade 6, if I see the school, and a child is tech savvy right from class 1 itself. The technology has the digital world that has come into and has brought in so many changes, transformation in this entire field of education. And the need of the hour, I would say, is to see that there is integration of seeing that there is environmental consciousness, environmental sustainability. Emotional intelligence is really, really required, making them emotionally strong. Critical and creative literacy is something that has to be embedded in whatever program they choose, whatever choice they make. And then the education for peace. This is also the need of the hour, because they need to know how to, with the boundaries and no more boundaries we see. We have people, taking the virtual knowledge from across the boundaries or from across cultures, religion, whatever. They need to respect, value each other's knowledge. And
thank you so much, Reshma ma'am. The 4 minutes are over, but let me try to summarize what you said, take some of the important points. So a complete shift of mindset has happened, which we all wanted for a very long time. Now it has actually happened, and the space is evolving in quite a positive way. We are now talking about flexibility. We are now talking about multiple career lives. It accelerated the pace of learning. It also, gave us a perspective where we all understood that innovation was a part of learning, and it's something that has to happen every day. It's not something that just springs up when you want to build a career or when you want to have an enterprise. You need to typically work on it continuously. Diversity in courses is something that's very much required now, because with the academic board of credit coming in, with the new education policy in India at least, there'll be a lot of flexibility that will come in. And when we want to, put our credits into one and then change subjects, this kind of flexibility is now needed, because we all have multiple career lives. There won't be a single career life anymore. The interests will change. We would typically be little skewed towards the interest rather than the passion. Because we create a little bit of differentiation where we can choose something new with the course of our own realizations that happen in life. And most importantly, a very important aspect that you added to the discussion is convenience of learning in the space of the learner. And most importantly, analysis and understanding the time and space of the learner. Where is he in? Kind of finding out what is happening in his mind, understanding his needs, and looking at education from his perspective. So thank you so much, Reshma ma'am. Let me invite the next speaker for today, Ms. Arpana Bharani Pillai, Director of the SunSmart Foundation International School from Chennai, Tamil Nadu. Arpana ji, over to you for the next 3 to 4 minutes. Please unmute your audio and a very warm welcome.
I was just about to unmute. All right. Hello, everybody. I was asked to run a sprint and I shall shoot right away. I'm a very simple person with a tall order. So here it is. I believe education is emancipation of human life, and hence social and emotional learning at the core of the curriculum, not just curriculum, but development of the human within every child. Because what happens then is we stop judging a fish by its ability to climb the tree, and also counselors who support and who hear the children out. And that way they have the scope and space to achieve full human potential. And the second one is school leaders adept in contemporary research as well as Vedic way of teaching. And you be the change that you want to see in the world, and you emanate that change. And teachers who hold the reins, who are the core people who write this entire thing, to be empowered with a research wing, not just existent, but thriving with action research. Probably start even with universal design for learning, make it more inclusive. And teaching to be looked at an aspirational as an aspirational career, not just because I have some time, I have to do something about it. And that way the perspective changes from accountability to responsibility, which means that I find the motivation for my work as a teacher from within rather than because I'm being paid. As a result of all of this, learning as thinking. We have something called the Curious Curriculum at the SunSmart Foundation, which is just creative free thinking hour. And I would like to see the progression of that in higher education. And finally, infrastructure. What's the point in nurturing the mind when you don't give the space and the physical environment doesn't support that? And you're going to put them into a rectangular cell. Open it out, let them collaborate, let them be a part, and let the philosophy vibrate through the walls of the school. And with all of that said, this is what I would love to see my SunSmart Foundation International School students to be accepted in an organization totally for the happy thinkers they are. And that's the organization I want to see, and I want them to grow from there. As teachers, let us dream, teach, and create. Jai Hind. Thank you. Over to you, Daksh.
Thank you so much, Aparna ji. Let me summarize what you said. आपने कुछ अच्छी बातें कह दी, which can be taken ahead in the discussion. So emancipation of human life, या कहीं ना कहीं trying and finding a way of achieving the full potential of every human being who gets into the education system, rather than trying to force him into a block that works for everyone. So rather than just focusing on building a society or a peg that works in the society, let's focus on individualism or individuality of that student. Hearing the child out. Again, feedback mechanisms which have to be made much more stronger, whether you do it through the counselors, whether you do it through parents, PTMs, or whichever way you can do it, hear them out, try to understand their perspective and how is the learner reacting to the complete ecosystem that you have built. Then you talked about teaching to be looked at as an aspirational career. I think that needs a lot of marketing to happen. That needs a lot of brand positioning, brand revival to happen, because teaching as a profession does not have a lot of aspiration. It has lost the luster that it had, but now it's regaining it since COVID came in, because now every single teacher that we recruit has to have a completely new set of skills that we call the media skills. He has to know how to face the camera. He should know how to keep people engaged, because education has now, taken a leap from just being content delivery to content engagement. And we also need to understand at the same point of time that from education, we should not move to entertainment at any point of time, because it's education. And the final realization, it could be humor, but the final realization should be a learning outcome. And that's a very fine, what we can say, line that we most probably, most of the cases cross and we do not understand. this is the new kind of skill or new kind of sensitivity that we need to develop within our teachers. You talked about learning as thinking. This is something very important. We need to teach our children that you must be able to learn at a pace that you think is right. And most importantly, you should be understanding the process of learning that happens to you. How do you learn? Because if you look at the process of learning, the first step is where you actively start, but learning only happens to you. You never do it. It has to finally come into you, and you have to finally, embrace it in your life, and that has to happen. Now, to enable that happening, you have to give them that open, free spaces and open times when they can think. So, and finally, let's create happy thinkers. So thank you so much, Arpana ji. Let me invite the next speaker for today, Mr. Rajesh Vasudevan, Head of School, Manchester International School from Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu. Rajesh ji, over to you for the next 4 minutes. Please unmute your audio, and a very warm welcome.
And thank you so much, Daksh, for this invitation. In fact, I was contemplating, because over the last 2 years as an educator, as a head of school, we have been invited to different webinars, and we discuss the same thing, grinding the same batter day in and out. But this one seems to be a different one for all its content that we are discussing, and thank you for this wonderful invitation. Now, before we think of the university of the future, as a head of school, as an institution representing the entire gamut of schools in the world, I am more concerned about the student of the future rather than the universities of the future. Now, we have moved from an industrial-based economy to a knowledge-based economy, investing more of our enthusiasm in building human capacity. Whether the school offers the CBSE curriculum or we are offering the international baccalaureate, no matter what the curriculum is, children are children, and they come to us with lots of aspiration and lot of dreams. Like Sir Ken Robinson said, do schools kill the creativity of the child? So keeping that in mind, we in schools, we are trying our best to make sure that our children are innovators and entrepreneurs in their own making. And it is with that scope and sequence that the curriculum is built, the teaching and learning is happening in the classroom. As a school leader, I firmly believe that schools have a greater responsibility, or institution per se has a greater responsibility in creating an entrepreneurial mindset or an innovative mindset in the students. When I say an entrepreneurial mindset, I'm talking about students who know how to bounce back from failures, who know that failure is not the end of the career, or it is not the end of their journey. These are the kind of students that we want to have. So when parents come and ask me, will my child be an engineer? Will he come out and maybe a doctor? I said, I don't have a machine in my office where you insert a card and I give you a doctor out. In fact, I remember a conversation with the Vice Chancellor of Sai University, Mr. Baruch, I believe, in one of the conversations we had. I said, I don't have a machine. I'll be very happy if someone invents a machine like that and give it to me. But I don't have, and I don't want that to happen. So we are thinking we want students who think global and act local. Let them think globally, but I want them to act local. They can think about what's happening in US, but let them think about what is happening in Sharavanambatti. Let them behave here, and that is the kind of culture that I want my students to be. Are universities ready for these kind of students? No, there's a big gap. There's a big gap between the schools and universities. We are working in silos. As you said, that's in the beginning, we are working in silos. And then again, students who would positively impact the broader community. With an international curriculum that I have, we developed the CAS project for the children, creativity, activity, and service, and we give them so much of things for them to work, become the critical thinkers that they are, become the 21st century learner with all the the skills and competencies they would like to have. But do the universities create that kind of a platform for the children to perform? There's a big gap. There's a lot of difference between what is happening inside the university and what is the demand outside the university, and that gap is never filled. We are talking so much about making medical, we are talking about engineering. What about the career of a teacher? Why no university is producing quality teachers these days? Coming back to one more point, and so as I said, we are creating students who would positively impact the community, who shape the society, who we think will create a well-being, work for the well-being of the society, who will improve and transform lives. These are the kind of students of the 21st century, who pass out of the schools. But are the universities ready to take these kind of students and prepare them further? And develop the role of the university per se is the development of human capital.
Thank you so much, Rajesh sir. The first 4 minutes were over, but we'll again come back to you because there's going to be an open floor at the end of it. But some amazing points that you've made. Let me try to summarize some of them so that they could be added to the complete discussion. That you're more concerned about the student of the future. And I think that's quite a valid concern, because when we talk of institutions, institutions change slowly. Individuals change at a very faster pace. And when we focus on the individual, we can create a much larger change in a much less amount of time. And I think that's something that we all need to understand, that when we talk of institutions, as of now, we talk about infrastructure, we talk about investment, we talk about methodologies, but we always forget that an institution or an organization will always be a collection of individuals. And what happens is the feedback mechanism or talking to these individuals just gets forgotten. So we need to understand that while we are building these organizations, always try to keep the focus on the individual and not just the organization's growth or the institution's growth. Because when we look at institutions, we look at its need, its tummy, its mouth, but we forget the actual tummies and mouths that we have within that institution who make up that organization. So curriculum does not define children. Children define dreams. And I think that should be the curriculum now, trying to understand their dreams, and let's give their dreams a transition into the real world where they can find their solace and their human potential. Bouncing back from failure, school's not a machine. And I think this is as a concept has to be taught to parents, that when you're sending a student or your ward to the school, it's a space that can enable, it's a space that can facilitate, it's a space that can give him new experiences, but do not have an expectation of the outcome. Because if you have an expectation of the outcome, you won't let him enjoy the kind of facilitation that we are trying to build within that institution. Because he has to enjoy the journey of going through the school, through the university, and that will achieve his full potential rather than just your expectation. And most importantly, a point I think which should very seriously be considered in the discussion is, are universities in a space, or can universities really think beyond legislation, beyond the kind of advisories that they get from the UGCs of the world, that can they create a free space for a child to keep thinking and trying to continue his learning or his independent learning that he has developed in the school ecosystem, if the school was able to create a free independent space. Because as a university, the pressure mounts, the expectation mounts, and for the university, it becomes really difficult to, again, sustain that kind of a free and, most importantly, enriching experience. Because at that point of time, the student also has a lot of digressions, which he has to fight with and stay focused to his studies or his curriculum. And most importantly, where you concluded, employment gap is never filled. There is no industry-university connect. It's basically a system that's working by chance. And that's where even Shailendraji said universities were losing their objective. Because there was nobody who was very seriously working on this, on trying to map the gap that was there, and then trying to meet it through the courses and through the curriculums that universities offer. And I would not only put the blame on the university. This is something that has collectively happened. Not only the university, there's a lot of legislation that comes in, there's a lot of committees that come in. So we need to take care of all those aspects. But yes, I think that's a good space that we're in when we can start discussing about this, that should there be a dedicated focus of all the education institutions, beginning from the school level, where we keep talking about how is the world evolving around us and how should we be mapping our daily operations according to our curriculums accordingly. Thank you so much, Rajesh, for these amazing inputs. Let me invite the next speaker for today, Ms. Priyanka Singh, the founder and the advisor for the Bangalore School, EEC branch, and the marketing consultant from Bright Cove, Bengaluru, Karnataka. Priyanka ji, over to you for the next 4 minutes. Please unmute your audio, and a very warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daksh. This is the third time when I'm, in your forum. And trust you me, every time you have given us a very brainstorming topic. And this one is my favorite. When we talk about future, I always believe that we should know the issues, what we have in our present, what is the solution. And honestly, whenever it comes to any educational institute, whether it is, universities, a school or a college or whatever, I always believe that when we talk about university, we need to understand what our students want, how we can help them. We just come up with our plans that what we want to do, how we want our kids to become machines so that they can start making money. What we don't understand that their mental requirement, their dreams, the way we take care of these things when they are in a kindergarten and school. I think the universities which we are dreaming for our future should understand the requirement of our kids, what and how they want it to be. The second thing, what our universities should be in the future, that they should work more for the kids' life skills. They should involve parents more when it comes to the kids' academic and non-academic development, because at the end of the day, once the child will complete his education from universities, he will come back to that regular world. He will earn from that world. He will live his life, becoming the part of that world. So I always believe that let's start involving all the parent community as well when it comes to decide any new thing for the universities, because together we can create a difference. I mean, come on, we are in a 21st century. We should not be bothered about the geographical boundaries. We should start using a lot of digital solutions like one-to-many, one professor from maybe Boston teaching all the kids, to the globe, involving the parent. This is something which is very much missing, because when we send our child to the kindergarten, we believe that, child will come and start telling what he or she has learned. The same thing happens when they start their school journey, when they start their journey for universities. But the involvement of parents become very less. The use of different apps, different digital platforms, we definitely start using it a lot, but we do not involve the team. So I personally believe that when we talk about the universities for future, we need to understand the digitalization is important, the parents' involvement is important. We make sure to use the subject which is relevant, not only, the engineering, medical, and the typical subjects, but the subject which is very much there in our world, which is maybe poverty, which is maybe the hunger issues, maybe, there are a lot of things. We need to address that. We need to create job opportunities there, and we need to understand what a child wants. And accordingly, we have to help them to grow. I don't have to say much, Dakshya, because my fellow contestants, they have covered a lot of things. I just want the future universities to start understanding the real problem. Instead of just becoming bookish, they need to understand, what is really required. So this is what I believe, Daksh.
Thank you so much, Priyanka. Let me try to summarize what you said. Identifying issues and solutions, what students want. I think this has become quite of a cliched question now, and it's typically like what women want. Now it's what students want, and that should be the focus area of education space. Trying to always talk to these children, trying to understand the ecosystem even better, because when we talk of education or educationists, we always believe in teaching and we forget the learning part of it. We focus all our attention on, are we teaching it right? Are we doing it right? I think at the same time, we should always be evaluating, are the children learning it right? Or most importantly, what kind of learning, what kind of personalization or customization do they need? And at every level, not just at the school level, but at the university level as well. Parent involvement to increase. I think this has already increased and it will increase automatically in the coming times, because with the digital classrooms coming in and the school or the university, reaching into everyone's home, that involvement has already increased. And over a course of time, it will surely increase. And I think all the education institutions would now need a customer relationship management department, which they normally do not have, because all your consumers and your customers are on a single classroom at every point of time, and they're listening to each and every step that you take. So relationship building and keeping that perception is again a task that has to be done at the institution level. And most importantly, opening the institution to the real world. I think we created an isolated space when we started to build education institutions, which is required when we need to teach. But I think there should be some window that gets opened up to the real world from time to time, when we can, hit and understand that whether our knowledge works or does not. Because it should not be a traumatic experience coming from the university to the real world. It should rather be a soft and easy transition that just happens to us. So let me invite the next speaker for today, Mrs. Vaishnavi Raj, Principal, Royal Concord International School from Bengaluru, Karnataka. Vaishnavi ji, over to you for the next 4 minutes. Please unmute your audio and a very warm welcome.
Hello everybody. So it was great listening to you all, and always the Blub World Web Talks will give a very innovative topics to discuss. Okay, so most of my educators have covered, because I am toward the verge of the today's program, my turn. So it's more of like summarizing what they have already represented, and few more points to add on. So the initially, when we look into the university of future, the globalization and rapid technology change is forcing university to redefine their role and value they provide to their students and society. So here, student-centered, interconnected courses, and as well as the striving for the better world. So that concept should be made. In future phase, all the universities should be deeply connected to the industries and communities around them. So the one more point is the customized, on-demand, tailor-made, flexible learning experience, what you want to achieve, switching seamlessly between online, on-campus some courses, and fully online and blended learning. So these are the different three different ways where the student can opt. So there are, as we have stepped into the completely, the pandemic has shown us this blended learning and other things. So we can make a major leap here. So in coming to the next point is the quality career advice. We have there is a lot of depth of need here, because what we have seen, what is their education, what they are striving to become is one thing, what is their bachelor degree and master degree will be the one thing, and what the service what they are rendering to the society will be the other thing. And ensuring the students to have a full range of skills, as our co-educators, heads of the other institutions also stressed on this point. So what they need before and after graduation, that has to be ensured. So finally, what I feel, again it's a repeated point, where it should be a place for collaboration and entrepreneurship. So university and industry should collaborate and work on the project to solve the real life problems. So thank you all for giving me an opportunity. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Vaishnavi. And I think one thing which we could understand from your complete perspective or prerogative was that we need to now focus more on the value that we are delivering to the student, because we now need to consider the student not just as a consumer. We need to understand him as a customer. You need to always try to figure out, okay, this is the right balance that I'm trying to give him, because now he knows that it's a service. And when it's a service, he needs to understand the value behind it. And when we as institutions start understanding it, I think the ecosystem will automatically grow, and we'll add a lot of more skill enhancement, wisdom enhancement activities in the complete education ecosystem. So thank you so much, Vaishnavi ji. Now it's an open floor. So if you got muted, if you're not able to speak something out, if you missed something, if you want to add something to the discussion, you can unmute yourself. And at that point right now, it's an open floor. You can all speak out anything that you think is left in the discussion or should at least come into the discussion as an important aspect to it. So anyone who wants to speak, you can unmute yourself. Just take care of each other so that if anybody wants to speak, he can.
That's just one last point. What I wanted to conclude was, it is high time that your focus of the universities have to change from just awarding a degree. You understand what I'm saying? Because definitely the significant the pivotal point universities play in the life of the students cannot be, we cannot just ignore it. It remains highlighted throughout their journey, because you become the world leader and people only talk about the university that you have passed out and the schools are less spoken about. Definitely, yes, maybe you trace down the history, you might find the schools that he has studied, but he has passed out from this university, that university is normally we talk about. So are today's graduates quite as certain of obtaining a job? That's my concern. If they pass out of the university today, are they ready for a job? Number one. Number two, is obtaining a degree from the university is the end to their journey. So how do universities turn around this to the dimensions of learning and teaching or preparing a future student? I don't think any discussion to that extent. Now the universities involving themselves in these lines, I think it is high time that they should think of. And that was the last point for me to conclude. And thank you, Daksh. Thank you for this opportunity.
I think a very important point that you raised is a lot of people, once you become successful in life, they talk only about the university that they passed out from. But if you actually look at the life of the life of Bill Gates, you'll typically realize his school contributed a lot into his development itself. And if you even look at the life of Steve Jobs, it was quite similar. It was not the higher education institution, but it was the development that happened from his kindergarten up to the university. And I think we would rather want to listen to Shailendra on this, that is the university really working, or are universities really looking at this beyond the degree and beyond just that job? Are we again ready to get into that space where we talk of wisdom, where employment, again, it remains an important aspect, but we still add more to a university than just degree and the final job that the student gets?
So I think, obviously it's a valid point. I mean, from the student's perspective, it seems like the degree is the end point. Certainly it sounds like from the university's perspective, they've done their job, once that degree has been actually given. But, in terms of actually, being able, I mean, even if you sort of grant that the university should play a role in actually, helping the students get the jobs, I think where the university can play, and that is going to be tough because a lot of it depends on the initial match between the students. I mean, someone talked about it, right? You can't get a fish to climb a tree, right? Something to that effect. I mean, that is, every student comes in with some potential, and to somehow, sort of make that match between the student's aptitude and what they would actually major in, I think is perhaps something the university could do. And the way they do that is actually offering in that first year, and some of these liberal universities now are doing that. They allow the student to sort of sample a range of courses, that would potentially dictate what they really want to actually major in. As you know, Daksh, and everyone else clearly on the panel does know that, I think people come in, flood the universities wanting to get degrees in something where most of them probably are not even interested in that particular program, right? I would think that's true for 99.9% of the students. So I think helping with that match a little bit can help in that final sort of, getting them job ready, because then once they're actually passionate about the subject, I think they can probably work harder. The university clearly has to step in. But I think that could be also an area where the university comes in, where they really match the students well with their aptitude.
Matching the aptitude with the degree, because when students come to universities, I think you're very right in saying that 99.99% come with the perception that they'll take a jetpack. The university degree is a jetpack that will propel them into a completely different world, which typically does not happen. So the perception there has to evolve at the level of the school as well, where we need to counsel them more, talk to them more, and try to understand where should they actually be making them more strong. Because now when you talk of skilling, it's kind of an add-on that you add to the personality. So you need to think on these lines as well. Thank you so much, Shailendra. So if anybody wants to add something else, it's an open floor. You can unmute yourself and add.
I also think future universities will be co-located with educational institutions, and industries are going to be co-located. And that way, children are able to do real-world projects, and they're actually working while they're learning. And I think that's again something in the future.
Right, co-location or typically coexistence with the industry and the university, so that you can work while you learn, and so that every day you're head banging and that, okay, this skill that I learned in the university works, and it works in the real life as well. So yeah, absolutely, it's something very important. Over to Louis.
Yeah, in my opinion, a lot of children from schools like ours, their ambition, their views are to go for a university abroad, because this is where they see the connect to future success in terms of job opportunities, etc. And I think it's a crying need in our country. Again, there are things on the horizon that are happening in our country, but I think it needs to happen to a much, much greater extent.
Right. We think that the international universities have some kind of a grail that they'll get, and that will, change or transform their life into a completely different way. We need to delve a little bit deeper into it. When we look at education and when we look at the transition from a school to a university, we are only looking at them as products because that's the way they're packaged. And that thinking, that perception has to dramatically change. The student has to be told that it's an experience that you're going to go through. It's not something that you're going to buy and that's going to plug into a university, to your personality, and that'll change you forever. So thank you so much, Louis. So any more points if anybody wants to add, you can unmute yourself or we can go to the next section. I think Reshma ma'am wants to say something.
Yes.
Yes, Reshma ma'am, please.
Thank you so much. The other thing what I would like to add to what my friends have said is, now a student has enrolled for a program and it is a 3-year program. And after the first year, the student feels that I'm no longer interested in this. He or she should be able to come out of it. But what happens is in the mindset, they think that, oh, I've lost an year. I've studied so much and this is not going to so they pursue it further without having an interest in that. So, but NEP now has told that when they finish first year, they get a vocational, a certificate. After completion of second year, they get another reward or some certificate, some degree that holds good. So they don't feel that year is lost and they can change their interest or the course that they are taking. So that flexibility is what is really, really important, I feel. Thank you.
And I think certification at every level, which, gives him that confidence that, okay, whatever time you have put into whichever subject, that does not limit you to that. Your personality is much more than this. You've added this to yourself. You can move on to a completely different arena or a completely different set or subject that you want to learn. So we are nearly at the end of the call. But before we end this call, while talking to these many school leaders on these many talks, we understood one very simple thing, that teaching has now to transform itself in a way that it just becomes magic. And when you want to make teaching magic, the only way is inspiration. You'll have to find out a way where you can inspire the child to become an active learner, to become an active individual, or rather a citizen, which you think would make the right kind of a society that we all need. So Blub World works on a very simple idea, and I would share a very small portion of that idea with all of you today. So on the end of all these calls, I try to share one story of a teenager who's doing amazingly well in his life. And one such story for all of you today. This story is of a little girl who started her painting career at the age of 9 months. When she was only 9 months old, she made her first painting. Then she had a full-blown exhibit of her paintings when she was 2 years old, and that was a sold-out show. The third show, which again was a sold-out, was at the age 7. And she became a millionaire at the age of 9 when she was invited to one of the most respected galleries in New York. And right now, she's still a millionaire, lives in Melbourne, Australia, has never been to a school, and right now is known as the world's youngest professional painter. And that's Elita Andre, who was on the cover page of Blub World just some months back. And this is what we simply do. Every month, we try to find out a teenager who's doing amazingly well in life and try to share their stories with many more teens. Because our stories, or the way we try to motivate them, inspire them, has become a little old. And we now need to find stories that they can correlate to. And just to do this, so that all these amazing teenagers could be brought together onto a single platform, since last 1 year, we are working on an aspiration. We are trying to build the world's first and the biggest parliament of teenagers. So we invite all of you to be a part of the World Teen Parliament. We are very thankful to UNESCO New Delhi office, UNESCO Mahatma Gandhi Institute for supporting this initiative. We also invite you and all your teenagers to share their ideas and become a parliamentarian of the World Teen Parliament, because we will be funding them, mentoring them, supporting them, and most importantly, nobody has to pay anything to be a part of the Teen Parliament other than their intelligence and their attention. I hope the last 60 minutes were enjoyable. If you enjoyed and if you want to attend the future sessions, you can open your audio, say a big yes, and thank you so much for being a part of the Blub World Web Talks 151st episode. Thank you, people. Namaste. Have an amazing evening.
Thank you, Daksh, and it's a yes.
Thank you so much. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Take care.
It's a true yes from us. Thank you so much for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Always a
Thanks,
yes, Daksh. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. And yes, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
What is that one thing that can transform this world? That one thing is education.
At Sai University, this active interdisciplinary model represents the future of education, not the mugging, rather thought-provoking ideas that stretch the mind and lead to a genuinely educated person who will go through life being able to seize new opportunities, create new businesses, and confront new challenges.
Sneha Chowdhury, Soumya Gandhi,
We are all proud to be a part of
Sai University.